Windows updates have had a reputation for breaking things for years now, and Microsoft may have finally realized the problem got bad enough that Windows itself now needs a recovery system for bad updates. And honestly, the deeper you look into today's tech news, the more it feels like companies are creating problems faster than they can fix them. Before we get into this, if you enjoy fast-paced tech videos that go beyond boring headlines and actually explain what's happening behind these stories, subscribe to Tech Reporter. We cover hidden Windows changes, AI drama, gaming news, and internet chaos before it blows up everywhere else. Because Microsoft is now officially working on a new Windows 11 recovery feature designed to automatically roll back broken driver updates before they completely wreck parts of your system, which honestly feels like the most Windows solution imaginable. Instead of fixing Windows Update's reputation, Windows now basically needs an emergency escape button for Windows Update itself. And they're not doing this for no reason. Over the years, bad drivers pushed through Windows Update have caused everything from broken audio and crashing systems to completely unusable hardware. So Microsoft is now developing something called Cloud-Initiated Driver Recovery, which sounds futuristic and slightly terrifying at the same time. The system is supposed to identify problematic drivers, remotely trigger rollback instructions through Windows Update, and then confirm a stable driver before uninstalling the broken one, which is important because apparently forgetting that last part caused issues before. And honestly, this whole thing highlights a much bigger problem with modern software. Updates are becoming so aggressive, automated, and interconnected that companies are now building recovery systems for the recovery systems. And if that sounds slightly unstable, that's because it kind of is. The feature is currently expected to roll out sometime in September 2026. So hopefully we don't eventually end up needing a cloud recovery system for the cloud recovery system. But while Microsoft is trying to stop updates from breaking PCs, another part of the tech industry might be heading toward complete chaos. Thousands of Samsung workers are reportedly preparing to go on strike next week, and memory prices are already reacting. DDR4 prices apparently jumped around 20% in a single week ahead of the potential shutdown. Because Samsung isn't just another tech company, they're one of the largest memory manufacturers on the planet. Meaning if production slows down, huge parts of the tech industry start feeling it almost immediately. And honestly, AI is quietly sitting in the middle of this entire situation too. Demand for AI hardware and data center memory has exploded over the past year, which means chip companies are suddenly making absurd amounts of money. And now, workers want a bigger cut of that money, which honestly becomes much easier to understand once reports started suggesting some employees at competing companies could eventually receive bonus payouts approaching nearly $1 million. At that point, you're not arguing over normal salaries anymore. You're negotiating life-changing wealth. Samsung reportedly stands to lose billions during a prolonged shutdown, while workers apparently feel comfortable holding out because the AI boom has shifted leverage heavily toward labor. And honestly, situations like this really show how AI demand is now affecting things far beyond software. It's impacting manufacturing, pricing, supply chains, negotiations, and entire industries. Meanwhile, AMD just quietly made a decision that a lot of PC gamers genuinely were not expecting. AMD has officially confirmed that FSR 4.1 will no longer stay exclusive to Radeon 9000 series GPUs, which is huge news for people who were not planning to spend absurd amounts of money upgrading graphics cards this year. Because until now, many people assumed AMD would lock the feature behind newer hardware to push upgrades harder. But instead, support is now reportedly coming to Radeon 7000 series GPUs this July, with hundreds of supported games at launch. And even older RX 6000 cards are expected to get support later on. Now there is still a catch. Older cards won't perform nearly as well because they lack some of the newer acceleration hardware found in Radeon 9000 GPUs. But honestly, the bigger story here is what this could mean beyond PC gaming. Because the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X both use architecture closely related to Radeon 6000 series GPUs. Meaning FSR 4 support on consoles suddenly feels much more realistic now. And if that happens, millions of players could quietly benefit from the same technology without even realizing it. But while gaming hardware is getting smarter, universities are now running into a problem they genuinely don't seem prepared for. A new University of California study analyzing hundreds of thousands of grades reportedly found that around 30 to 40% of students admitted to using generative AI for assignments or exams, depending on their field of study. And honestly, that number is probably terrifying for universities. But the really interesting part came next. Compared to pre-AI baselines from just a few years ago, researchers also reportedly found a massive increase in students receiving A grades, which means schools are now facing a problem that's becoming harder to ignore every semester. Because AI tools are evolving much faster than traditional education systems can adapt to them. And honestly, universities seem completely stuck. They can't realistically ban AI because students already use it everywhere. But they also can't fully trust whether submitted work actually reflects student ability anymore. Which means education systems are slowly entering a very strange gray area where nobody fully knows what authentic academic work is supposed to look like anymore. And the scary part is, this problem probably gets much bigger once AI tools become even harder to detect. But somehow, Sony still found a way to create one of the funniest AI stories today. Sony's newest Xperia flagship phone is getting roasted online after demo images for its AI camera assistant started spreading across social media for all the wrong reasons. Because instead of making photos look impressive, people thought the AI examples actually looked worse. Users started criticizing the demos for blown-out brightness, washed colors, and overly processed images that honestly made the camera feel less natural instead of more advanced. Sony later clarified that the AI assistant isn't directly editing photos and is only suggesting settings users can apply themselves, which is basically corporate language for, please stop yelling at us, nobody's forcing you to use the AI mode. And honestly, this keeps happening across the industry. Companies keep rushing AI branding into products because they're terrified of looking behind competitors. But users are increasingly pushing back whenever the AI experience actually feels worse than the original product, and that backlash is starting to become a real pattern. Meanwhile, ASUS is now launching its first ROG-branded RAM kits, despite previously denying rumors that it planned to enter the memory market, which honestly feels like every gaming company eventually deciding they want to manufacture every PC component simultaneously. The new RAM reportedly unlocks additional performance features when paired with ASUS motherboards, because apparently RGB lighting alone was no longer enough to achieve maximum gamer energy. And finally, the Stop Killing Games initiative just scored a pretty major win after a California committee approved a bill that could eventually require publishers to provide offline solutions or refunds when online games lose support. Which is huge because this debate has been getting more intense every year. Players are increasingly frustrated by buying games that effectively disappear once servers shut down, while publishers continue arguing players never truly owned those games in the first place. And honestly, this conversation is probably going to become much bigger over the next few years as more live service games inevitably shut down. Because people are getting tired of spending money on products that can permanently vanish the moment support disappears. So today's tech news somehow included Windows preparing for broken updates, exploding memory prices, AI confusing universities, Sony getting roasted over AI photography, and gamers once again arguing over whether they actually own the games they buy. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to Tech Reporter for more fast-paced tech news. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.